Hello everyone, this is Vortex, and in this video I'm going to talk about the Shadow Temple. The Shadow Temple, also known as the House of the Dead, is either the 4th or 5th temple depending on your own preference. It is probably the creepiest temple in Zelda history. I remember when I was a kid, I actually forced my older brother to finish the temple for me because I got scared. The Shadow Temple looks like a mausoleum and it's located in the back of the graveyard. It's being described as quite literally the House of the Dead. There are multiple gravestones in the Kakariko graveyard that mention that there are mostly royal family members and Sheikah buried there. This would imply that the Shadow Temple originally probably also housed several graves of these people. Once you go inside the temple, you'll find that it's blocked by a large gap, which you can only cross as adult Link due to the need of a long shot. Everywhere inside the Shadow Temple, there are walls that will tell you about the blood of Hyruleans from ages past. Most likely these walls are referring to the Hyrulean Civil War, where all the races from Hyrule waged war against each other. Since the walls refer to an age before Ganondorf came to power, it's implied that the Shadow Temple was already evil without Ganondorf's influence. Judging from the interior design of the Shadow Temple, I think it was used as a torture site during the Hyrulean Civil War. This theory is based on a few locations and tools within the temple, and a lot of guesswork. This theory is a little bit gruesome though, so you have been warned. Firstly, there are many torture devices visible within the temple, and they actually look like they've been used. These devices take many shapes, but they all come down to scaring and hurting the victims, opposed to outright killing them. For instance, some of these devices appear to be actually pretty dysfunctional, other than being rather frightening. The guillotines that drop in an endless pattern, for example, look very scary, but they can be avoided rather easily. The same goes for the room with the swinging Grim Reapers. This room may have been used to behead captives in droves, but considering how easy it is to avoid the sights, I highly doubt this room was used for that purpose. There's a shortcut to the ferry from this room as well, so the room was probably used for that shortcut. The second time we find sights, they are invisible, probably to scare and catch people by surprise. Then there's a device called the Rain of Pain. Potentially a very useful killing device. It would stab people who would walk underneath them, and if that did not kill them, the sheer weight of the Rain of Pain probably would. There seems to be a few jails in this room as well. These cells could have been used to store the captives while they awaited their fate. These captives could be watching others walk underneath the Rain of Pain, and they would see the horror that would unfold. The people running the Shadow Temple were probably mostly interested in psychologically scarring their prisoners rather than killing them all. The captors were forcing people to start giving information. Now on to the second piece of evidence supporting the Shadow Temple being a torture site. Some of the rooms have walls made of bones of the dead, mostly skulls. This is also the case in Dead Hand's room. Dead Hand is an enemy in both the bottom of the well and the Shadow Temple that attacks you by biting you as if he's trying to eat you. It seems that because of that behavior, the Dead Hand was fed people. These people would be forced into Dead Hand's room and bars would prevent their escape. Dead Hand would eventually rise up and eat them, probably adding the bones to the pile that's forming the walls. The walls probably aren't really walls either, but literally piles of bones, but the Nintendo 64 couldn't really render this effect. If you look closely at Dead Hand, you'll see it has some red wounds that were most likely caused by captives trying to fight back. Dead Hand was likely used on victims that refused to talk or already fulfilled their purpose. Lastly, in the very back of the temple, there's a small maze full of floor masters. There are 3 rooms here. One has closing spiked walls, which is kind of a dirty way to kill off people. Another has 3 spinning giant skulls, who could have functioned as cremating devices. And the last room is probably the most interesting. There's a bloody cross in the middle and lots of blood everywhere. Unlike the other rooms, it seems that people here were killed by others. There's no special device or anything. This could have been an interrogation room. Captives were questioned to help gain vital information for the long war. All the other rooms within the temple were not just for killing, but to instill so much fear that every prisoner was willing to talk. Some Hylians wanted to win the war so badly, they were willing to do anything. The Shadow Temple is proof of this disturbing greed. Another interesting thing about the temple is its ferry. The ferry looks like a reference to the journey across the Styx to reach Hell at the end. Ironically, there's a symbol of the Triforce on the ferry, and the ferry is activated with a song only the royal family knows about. That's rather strange, isn't it? Does that mean the royal family knew about what happened in the Shadow Temple? Might they actually be responsible? I personally don't believe the royal family made the Shadow Temple as we see it now. I do think they were affiliated with the temple before it turned into the darkness that we see today. The Shadow Temple is a mausoleum, first and foremost. A mausoleum is traditionally a tomb for important people, respected people, and this is where I believe the royal family comes into the picture. These people have been buried into the mausoleum and were at peace, and suddenly there's a bunch of strangers that come in and fill the temple with various torture devices, and they start killing people. People that were suspected of knowing anything about the war or the Triforce were interrogated and murdered, which means the House of the Dead is now defiled. The corrupted spirits of the captives and the royal family rose from the dead. They came back as Gyptos, Raydats and Stalfos. Last we have Bongo Bongo. In a previous video I explained that Bongo Bongo could have been a Sheikah who was executed by his tribe and then sealed away in the bottom of the well. I think Bongo Bongo could have been an important figure in the Hyrulean Civil War. His war atrocities were punished by death. At the start of the boss fight, Bongo Bongo beats a drum. This could have been a war drum. This drum could have been used in the past as a signal for his underlings to start killing. If you listen very carefully to the boss fight music, you can actually hear Bongo Bongo singing. Also, an interesting thing is that Bongo Bongo's body is literally hanging from the ceiling. It is not very visible during the boss fight since you can't look up, but Bongo Bongo is hanging down from the legs. The rest of its body is hidden in the shadows. This is why the Shadow Temple was sealed off. The royal family asked the Sheikah, who are not Hylian, to seal off the temple in order to prevent the evil from entering Hyrule. Most likely it was Impa who placed all the seals there, since she is after all the Sage of Shadow. She was also able to seal Bongo Bongo into the well. Interestingly, there are multiple seals. First off, the actual passage to the Shadow Temple is inaccessible. We need the Nocturne of Shadow to get in. Secondly, there is a giant door with the mark of the Sheikah. Finally, the only way to open the door is with a fire spell, which is conveniently found within Hyrule Castle gates, behind a giant boulder. The sign in front of the entrance to the Great Ferry even says it's a dead end, in order to discourage people from trying to get in. All of these things combined make it less likely for anyone to undo the seal to the Shadow Temple and potentially release all the evil contained within.